Scuddy, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Bullis Gotti. I had a compliment. I was really sitting down and I really was thinking about this. And it came to my mind. And I said, yo, Big U really was the last dawn of the West Coast. Like that last regime of like the press game, the extortion game of California, like Los Angeles, like, because it all started with Mike Conception and T. Rogers, and then from Mike Conception and T. Rogers, it went to, Suge, Del Dog, Big U, Bone, Wacko, many others. So, when I said to myself, I said, you know what? Big U may be the last dog. Like, because look, Suge in jail, Del Dog is dead, Big U is now incarcerated. I think he was the last dog. I think what happened with Big U, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. What happened with Big U is what happened with a lot of gangsters. But the thing with Big U, and I really say this cold-heartedly, Big U got too big. I wouldn't even say got too big for his bridges. Big U became a liability to himself and to others, because you could be in that leaning game, but you can't turn your leaning game into like a commercial or a promo. And the things he was doing was straight bully. Key Rock was really the face of the 60s, and then, because if you remember, Key Rock was the one, he was riding around with Pac, Corrupt, and all of them. So he was like the one that was like the guy, that was Suge guy. And then Big U came home and he got affiliated with, him and Suge was tag team. He was like Suge's second in command. Even if you read the paperwork, you see he was like Suge's second in command. Suge put money in his pocket and got him on his feet, and him and Suge was just leaning. And they wasn't playing. But I think what happened with Big U was what happened to a lot of people. When you was stored and you do it the way Big U was doing it, you start making yourself become a liability. And Big U became a liability to himself and other people. Him being a bully. And then your soldiers is not respecting you. See, Big U, if he had soldiers that respect him, he probably would have not been in the situation that he in right now. But when your soldiers get online and say that you did such and such thing, did that, and then his jealousy is what really, I would say, destroyed his legacy or his reputation, because the jealousy of Nipsey, being that Nip was successful, Nipsey was the face of 60s. Because if you look, Nipsey was the guy. Like Charleston White said, this is the guy pulling up in Rolls Royces, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Benzes, Maybachs, Range Rovers, you name it. He wearing all the fly designer clothes, jewelried up. He's really that dude, and he doing his thing on the business level. So he's on a whole level where Big U was the go-to face. He was the go-to face, big draws. And then he wasn't the guy no more. And it's like, when you look at 60s, the two biggest rappers coming from that movement is Corrupt and Nipsey, really. And, you had Papa LQ, which is Kenny Kingpin. But Nip was the biggest, because Nip was just his grind was just so huge. Like, his hustle was just huge. Like, this is a dude he's in position. And Big U just was jealous. You know, when you look at this whole thing, right, with Big U, you know, even with the thing with Shorty, like, Shorty, they saying in the paperwork that Shorty made a diss song on him, and then Shorty ended up dead, you know, who was his son's friend, right? Then you see with Nipsey, you know, he does a diss track and Big U want to fade with him, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, some say Nip put the beats on Big U, you know, he put the beats on Big U. Then some say, you know, Big U assaulted his pops, and they was going to jump him, and Black Sam jumped in, which he did all right. He was supposed to jump in. That was his brother. You know, he's supposed to jump in for his baby brother. You know what I'm saying? Which is a real one. You know, so when you got somebody like Big U, that's just a bully, straight up bully. You know what I'm saying? And he just wants to be the biggest, toughest, roughest Don Dada of the whole situation. Of the whole movement. And he feel like, you know, because you got to look, Big U was a drug kingpin. He goes to jail. You know, he comes out. He on peace, my brother, assalamu alaikum. He's a Muslim now, right? So he isn't, you know, the same Big U that he was when he came home, but he got into the industry. Suge put him in there through Corrupt, and then boom, he gets to the game that he became the king of, the check-in extortion game, right? So, you know, he gets the connections. You know, he got a hand in the movie, the music, the sports. He got a hand in everything. But Big U was just not keeping it player and not keeping it boss-like. He was just being a full court press bully. And in the extortion game, if you look at it, Albert Anastasia, and you look at a lot of gangsters that were bullies, two things happened to them. Even Vito Genovese was a bully. That's why he ended up going to jail. And that's the same thing with Big U. He was a bully. You know, he was the Paulie. I told y'all, he's the Paulie in Goodfellas. You know, when Paulie turned his back on Henry Hill, he said, yo, now I got to turn my back on you. That was Big U. He turned his back on Loose Cannon. Loose Cannon was like, okay, you want to turn your back on me? I'm going to expose you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say this. You know, it just showed no loyalty. And then when I look at the dudes like Suge, right? Suge, let's keep it real. Before the situation that happened, at Straight Outta Compton movie shoot, Suge was really had the press game, you know what I'm saying? And he still had the hitters. Don't get it twisted. Suge still had the hitters, because everybody talk about Greg the Knockout Kid, but they don't talk about when Greg the Knockout Kid got shot by one of Suge hitters. Stocking nigga. You know what I'm saying? He lived, but he got shot. Alright? So Suge had a strong hold, you know, in LA. He still was that dude, even though he went to jail for the violation and all that, but he still had a stronghold. And you gotta look, he had a lot of snakes in his circle. Like, you look at people like Reggie, you look at people like David Kenner, they were snakes stealing and doing a lot of BS. But when Suge was Suge, and he was the man, though he had a lot of leeway because you got to understand, Suge learned the game from Dick Griffey and Gene Griffin. You around two of the biggest gangsters in the music industry. Gene Griffin was one, and Dick Griffey. You know what I'm saying? So he learned the game from a East Coast Don and a West Coast Don. And that made him a monster. That's why he has so many connections with a lot of people in the streets. You know what I'm saying? And that's why he was connected. But he was strong, bro. You know, he was strong. Suge was strong. It's just he didn't like a lot of dudes. You know, and you gotta look. A lot of people were scared of Suge, bro. Especially Snoop and Dre. They were scared of Suge. You know what I'm saying? Big U had these dudes paying. All he did was take off. All he did was, after Suge went to jail, he took off where Suge left off and got into the check-in game. He already had the full court press because he was with Suge. He was Suge's second in command. So all he did was take the whole thing that him and Suge was doing and continue to keep doing it. And that's what made him a beast. You know, he was a beast. If you really look at Big U was a beast, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything you reading in the paperwork, dude was ruthless. You know what I'm saying? Dude was ruthless. You know? And dude was a snake because he would smile in your face, act like he rocking with you, and then he extorting you. You know what I'm saying? At least it's certain ways you do it. You know, at least when you look at a Del Dog or you look at a Suge, they did it kind of respectable. But when you look at a Big U, he did it on a bully level, and it was not even like he rock with you. He on some, yeah, I'm gonna rock with you, but if you ain't checking in or paying, I'ma line you up, and I can't respect that. You know what I'm saying? And then it's just so sloppy, like how everything went down. Like when I looked at the case, like the Operation Drawdown and just the disloyalty, it looked like everybody telling on the nigga because everybody got bail, but except him and the Lucid Cannon and Brook Baby. But everybody, the shorty got bail. Everybody got bail. All the co-defendants got bail. There's only 3 of them that's still locked up. It's Brick Baby, Loose Cannon, and Big U, right? So all these dudes is telling. Even Shorty, because Shorty got allegedly they saying she got a baby. The chick in the food truck got a baby by Big U. So that right there is just wacky. I'm going to keep it real. It's just wacky. Like a lot of things that just went on with this Big U situation just shows you that Big U was just sloppy with his business and he was talking too much. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing when your underlings is talking about checking in. It's another thing when you talking about it on interviews and you talking about, yo, and you got Bimmy and you got Steve Lobel and you got Trick and you got Dr. Dre, you got Snoop stressing about the check-in and this is what you got to do when you come out here, out west. You check in, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, yo, dog, what you was saying, you was basically advertising. You was advertising extortion. You know what I'm saying? You wasn't saying, yo, on the real, yo, you know, when you come out here, you know, we gonna hold you down. You was basically saying, yo, check in or else. You know what I'm saying? And then when you see the situation with AB and the dice game, he didn't check in. So because he didn't check in, they wanted to discipline him. You know what I'm saying? Because the dice game wasn't sanctioned by Big U. So Big U had really a strong pull, but he was just doing too much. And then the way he was doing it was kind of sloppy too, because he was using his non-profit program basically to make people check in and pay poor tax from his nonprofit program. So that right there just showed he was sloppy. You know what I'm saying? But when you watch the Hip Hop Undercover and you just watch that documentary, he's just doing too much. You know what I mean? And I watched the documentary when it first came out. You know what I'm saying? And if you watch it, he was just doing too much. He was doing too much. You know what I'm saying? And if you really watch it, besides Benny, if you watch the documentary, Jack is an extortionist, right? Trick, that's his game in Detroit. You know what I'm saying? He Mr. No-Fly Zone. You know what I'm saying? He's Mr. No-Fly Zone. Like you know what I'm saying? You disrespect, it's no-fly zone. So you already know what that is. You know, check-in is full effect out there. But with Big U, he was just stressing the check-in. Yo, if I go to Chicago, I check in. If I go to Atlanta, I check in. He just kept saying he check in. That's what he just kept saying. Every interview he said, yo, I check in here, I check in there, I check in. And I just didn't understand that because anybody that goes in any state, you check in with your peoples. You don't check in with randoms. You check in with your peoples. That means your loved ones, your homies. You check in with people you know. Big U talking about you check in with somebody that's known. Nah, I don't agree to that. You know what I'm saying? I agree. Like if you got peoples out there, like 50, he had peoples out there, right? So he rolling and checking in with his peoples, his fam, that's out in LA. You know what I'm saying? You got Puff got D-Mac, that's his fam, that's his team, that been his peoples, from back in the days, you know what I'm saying? Heavy D days, Heavy D, that's Heavy D means, Eric B means D-Mac. So he checking in and connected with Mansfield Gangsta Crips, right? So when you look at everybody else that may not have no connection with anybody, they stressing, yo, you gotta check in. So then you seeing what happened in the P&B Rock. You seeing what's happening to Pop Smoke. Loose Cannon, all he did was dry snitch on himself. Same with Big Brick Baby. And the same with Big U. All they did was dry snitch on themselves because they went on podcasts and was just not knowing when to shut up. Because I just feel like when I look at dudes like Del Dog and I just look at the dudes like Mike Concepcion and even Suge, bro, like these dudes did what they did, but they was more smooth with it. Suge was a bully aggressor, but he wasn't going to tell you, yo, I'm doing this, I'm nigga checking, like nah. She'll come to you on some, check your temperature. He want to see if you a man, I respect that. I respect how Suge move, but what Big U is, yo, he on some dictator, Fidel Castro, tyrant type of thing. Like, listen, y'all check in. And he had a long run. Out of everybody, he had the longest run. Out of Del Dog, out of Suge. Suge had a long run too. But Suge kept getting violated. He went to jail. And then he came home. But Big U had a longer run because he was home for 21 years. So we talking from 2004, he had the Iron Fist being the second in command for Suge, to 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2000. This is 3 decades we talking about. 3 decades. We talking about the 2000s, 2010s, and the 2020s. That's 3 decades of being in position in the streets. That's really look at that. That's 3 decades. The 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. We in 2025. Like Big U had that stronghold like this. The man had a podcast on World Star Hip Hop called Checking In. You know what I'm saying? He was basically propping himself up to be the J Prince of the West Coast. Like, everybody had to check in with him in the West Coast, in LA. That's how he positioned it. Because if you read the paperwork, he was like this with him. Strong. And we talking about the Meek Mills, the DJ Khaled's, the Draymond Greens, they saying, you know, AB, who didn't get sanctioned, you know, and many others. James Harden, you know, he was basically on some aggressive bullying type of tactics. He had the NBA players, he had the actors, he had the street dudes, all under the Big U umbrella. So, if he didn't sanction you, it was like what Frank White said, no dope deals, no nothing. He was on that type of timing with dudes. Like, it was a sanction. Like, it was, he was on that, I'm a shot caller, I'm a big dog in LA. These dudes got to check in. They got to cut the check, or they can't do nothing in LA. That's how Big U was moving, on that type of timing. And in my opinion, how I feel is that that's what got it. You know, and then all of the internet beef, all of the back and forth with Whack 100, all you know, the Instagrams, the, you know, the Clubhouse, just all of the nonsense that was going on the internet is what really, like Hassan Campbell, you know, with the recording with him and Wag on the phone. He's also, I would say, also caused a lot of this. Brick Baby, Loose Cannon, some of what 600 was doing, you know, a lot of it, and even what Big U was doing, a lot of it caused Big U to get incarcerated, because Big U just didn't know how to bow out gracefully and just chill and kick back. He just wanted to be, you know, I'm Big U, I'm a gangster, and I'm moving like this. And that's why Big U is now in the situation that he's in right now. If Big U would have just kicked back and chilled, Big U probably would have not been incarcerated. But Big U was in jail because Big U just didn't know how to shut his mouth. That's how I feel. I feel he should have just shut his mouth. I feel like Big U should have just stopped promoting the checking in, because the checking in backfired on him, because now they saying, oh, that's extortion. Oh, that's, you know, robbery, kidnapping, all this. They charging this man with, because his underlings went online. They didn't respect his gangster, and he didn't make it any better. He going doing interviews. He did Hip Hop Undercover. He did Drink Champs, Breakfast Club. You know, And that all got him caught in the trick bag. So, Big U, I'm going to keep it real. He did it to himself, man. But that's what happens when you got a huge ego. That's what happens when your arrogance can F you up. That's what happens when, you let people fuel too many fires. Big U should have just nipped everything in the bud. He didn't show that he was a true leader and a true general, and like when I looked at dudes like Mike Conception, when I look at dudes like Suge, the only thing that what messed up Suge was him going to the Straight Outta Compton, but if he never would have went there, Suge probably he'd have been alright, because imagine Suge doing podcasting. His documentary was one of the dopest that he did before he went to jail. Big U, and I'm gonna keep it real, Big U story should be told. They told it on Hip Hop Undercover, but he deserves a documentary. Or a movie, because to have control of LA the way he did with the extortion game was just crazy. And a lot of the things, man, I was like, dude, a snake. And he was just doing things like, I was like, damn, dog, like, he was extorting dudes for like, sometimes peanuts, bro. But it was just like, he didn't care, bro. He was on some, I'm shaking everything moving, bro. Nightclubs, everything are coming up off that bag. And that's why I say he's the last Don, because after him, the extortion game is over with. LA is going to become a small city. They don't want dudes like Big U on the street, because he was doing too much. And when you start doing too much like he was doing, and you got grants from the city, and you got legal grants, grid program, you got all this stuff that you making bread from, and you get incarcerated, and you basically now in jail because your ego put you there, I wouldn't want to be Big U, man. But it is what it is, man. It's your boy Bo Scotty. Salute.